Section 3, Beartooth Lake to Cooke City. This was the shortest section, but the hardest, and also probably the most spectacular. So, after going home for a couple of days, making pancakes for the boys, snuggling a whole bunch, and Epsom salts and betadine for my feet, I was feeling much refreshed. And the boys brought me up to Beartooth Lake Campground, where I waited for Nick to arrive. And as we were talking about the days ahead and going over the map, discussing hiking pace and other details, Nick shared a quote in Italian with me, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was something like, "Fe fretta è una brutta cosa." To make rush is an ugly thing, which sounded like the perfect motto for the Beartooths. All right, Section 3 detail from Beartooth Lake over just above Cooke City. So this was the shortest section at about 32-ish miles, but in some ways the most intense. Super high elevation, rugged terrain, absolutely gorgeous, steep ups and downs. Lots of beautiful lakes, and you can see the terrain is getting less and less vegetated as we go higher and higher and work our way eventually over to Rough Lake and then Upper and Lower Arrow Lakes, which is just, look at that terrain. It's insane and awesome and austere and all the things. And so then we worked our way down to Zimmer Creek, I believe, and to meet the family down on the Lulu Pass Road right here. And then they actually drove us up. I think we had to go down towards Cooke City, but we went up and over Daisy Pass, and they dropped us off up and over here just to reduce the rest of the mileage for that day before we started the next section. So starting off, it was definitely an embarrassment of riches. Blue sky, mild weather, the Beartooth showing off for Nick, who was giddy and happy and never stopped smiling. The hike was also much harder than I was expecting. It reminded me of the Adirondack style, straight up and down. On sort of family trips, we always, base camp and gently meander around, but this was not the gentle wandering through mild terrain that I was used to on family Beartooth trips, but it definitely suited. And we found a camp a little short of our main destination, which was this beautiful little hanging garden beneath bonsai-seeming white bark pines above two hanging lakes. And a short climb above camp onto the granite ledge yielded a nearly 360 view of the peaks all around. So I got to look to the peaks to the south, the ones I couldn't make it over, and deeper into the Beartooth, the crags to the east, Pilot and Index peaks, and even Cutoff Peak to the west. So there's Pilot and Index there in the background. And this is North Crandall, I think. And the storm clouds in the evening late light just danced in the most moving way with a spectacular sunset that illuminated the craziest clouds to the east that were sort of shooting in rays and billowing like a mushroom cloud, all purple and orange and pink and blue. It was just over the top stunning, a great end to a fantastic day. And I feel like Nick's pictures, his paintings of that sunset capture it even better, a lot better than my photograph. On the left is his study right there in the field, his gouache study. And then on the right is his oil in progress that he's making from that study. So the next morning, we begin working our way through the heart of the Beartooth towards Otter Lake, which is our destination for the night. And just very classic Beartooth fantasticness. And we arrive at Otter Lake in time for evening light and beautiful reflections and sunset. All in all, a pretty spectacular day. Now, the next day starts probably the most epic hike I have done in a long time, if ever. So here's what I wrote in my journal. Holy crap, what a day. Can I even call it a day? So much ground covered, so many moments of beauty and joy and fatigue and pain that it feels impossible. It all could have happened in one day. We started off trail between Otter and Marianne Lakes after a shiver and shake inducing thunderstorm the night before. So here's Marianne Lake. And on the way down, we passed an incredible waterfall on this just steep downhill to a trail called the Beaten Path that transects the Beartooth right above Russell Lake. And hitting that well-maintained trail was quite a joy after navigating all the tumble-down boulders on the steep descent. You know, so much of walking over the boulders and talus just seemed like entire mountainsides were crumbling one angular boulder at a time. And, you know, I suppose they were. But we love the Great Trail. It was much easier walking up to Ouzel Lake, one of my favorite places for a much needed break before heading on to our off-trail section. Took a little break to have lunch and paint and write in our journals before what was to be a pretty intense second half of the day. So one of the things I had underestimated was how much more tiring it would be traversing over boulder and talus fields, and even over the lumpy meadows, which are kind of like as if you had thousands of basketballs just buried just under the surface of the grass, and you had to, you know, either try to balance on top or step in the trough in between, and you know, it was pretty tiring, but beautiful and lovely, and we kept at it and kept working up higher and higher as the clouds started to come in. You know, every new twist and turn was just simply spectacular, from small little vignettes of moss over the granite and remnants of flowers to these sort of sharp, imposing mountains, Villard, and I think this might be Glacier in the background. It might be farther around to the left, but severe mountains rising above in the distance. But when we got to topped out on a pass of barren rock above Rough Lake, the landscape changed to this scarred lunar landscape. And all of a sudden, we're beneath building clouds, and there was a raging wind, and our legs were burning, and it started to snow a little bit. And we started to get really cold, and you know, the Beartooth started to seem awful serious, awful fast. And so we picked our way down hanging gardens and talus fields to shelter behind a dark rock outcropping to fill water, layer up, have some snacks, and get ready because we still had several miles to go. This is just a view of So then we went across the creek between Rough and Lone Elk Lakes and up this crazy, lumpy, high ridge. Dusk is approaching, and somehow our bodies are just coming along, making it happen, powering through. I can't believe I'm still going. And we finally top off at the pass up above Upper and Lower Arrow Lakes in probably the most intimidating and forbidding landscape I'd ever been in. The wind was howling, the daylight was fading, and you know, we actually had no idea if we could get down the slope on the other side before dark. So the maniacal laugh on both of our parts contains so many things: relief and awe and exhaustion, and a lot of how the heck are we going to get down this crazy slope before dark? And Nick's superb route finding helped us work our way down. You know, we're balancing, climbing down steep faces, and eventually down to cap in the lee of a sort of this giant black rock. The wind was absolutely howling, so we had to find a windbreak of some sort. But on the way, it was just still so spectacular. And I think we were going on just sheer awe and amazement at this point. The sky getting really gorgeous as the sun was setting over Lower Arrow Lake. And just to be so spent and exhausted and cold and blasted by the wind, combined with the divine view and these feelings of just ecstatic feelings of being in this place. There aren't too many words to describe it. And honestly, it felt like we were in an alternate universe. So the moon rose just before bed, bathing the landscape in this sort of eerie moonlight over our tents. This big black rock was our major friend. That was the big windbreak that allowed us to actually be able to camp at all. Um, just some more pictures of the moonrise. So the next morning, I heard Nick zipping and stuffing in his tent at 6:30 a.m. The sun's still pretty far away from our tucked-in spot. He says, "I'm ready to get off this mountain." And so we woke up and packed up and ate cold bars, and got on our way towards one more unknown, which is finding our way around Lower Arrow Lake. But it was a beautiful, gorgeous day, great for walking. We had every single layer we'd brought with us on. It was still pretty darn cold. And luckily, we found a social trail that guided us up a ledge, on a path around Lower Arrow Lake, across these sort of grass and granite peninsulas and talus, to a sheltered beach on the west side of the lake, just before the official trail picked back up again. And here's where we made coffee and tea and ate granola and oatmeal. And Nick just captures the moment perfectly, leaning back on this rock with his face to the sun, his eyes closed, a look of extreme gratitude on his face, for a sunny and warm place to rest. It kind of sums up how we felt in that moment. So the trail down was so steep, we couldn't possibly imagine climbing back up, and down to a truly lovely trail along Zimmer Creek and sort of this fairy forest through the woods, until we had this final endless seeming climb uphill, of course, before the trailhead, where we heard whistles from George and yells from Rachel. And it was one heck of a push, but we made it in another spectacular day. So I think all in all, Nick and I were pretty darn proud of what turned out to be a fairly serious physical and navigational accomplishment for both of us.